Bob, it's so good to see you again. Again, thank you so much for co-hosting and moderating the discussion in Philadelphia. It was lots of fun. I know some people may or may not know that you got a new but not so new role as a CISO of Merck. Can you say a few words about the position and the org?
Yeah, so I came on to Merck about maybe a year and a half ago now as the Cyber Fusion Center lead, and the CISO here, Terry Rice, who had been here for a long time, 18 years. He's probably one of the first CISOs ever, or at least in pharma. He's a legendary career. He decided to take another role at Boeing, and I was asked to fill in for him. So that's kind of where we're at now. But yeah, I'll talk a bit about the organization. So Merck as a whole, we're a large global pharmaceutical company. We have about 75,000 employees. We operate in many different countries. We have many dozens of manufacturing sites across the world. And our group is what we call ITRMS. So that's because every security team has to have an acronym. It's IT, risk management, and security. And where we fall under the IT division in Merck. And my team, I like to say it has kind of 3 core functions and 2 supporting functions. So the core functions are cyber operations, which kind of the day-to-day detect and respond vulnerability intel side of things. That's I'd say it's close to about 100 people or so. We have 3 global sites that are the primary sites for us, for my team, which is Rahway, New Jersey, Prague, and Singapore. And then we have our core cyber team, which is like our engineering and protection team. That's our largest group, about 200 people. And then we have I call our business technology risk group, which has our red team, some of our what we call our BSOs or bureaus, which are the connection to the business. So they're kind of the strategic risk experts, and they also have a team that does risk reviews. Those are kind of the primary functions, and then we have 2 supporting functions, which which are GRC, governance, risk, and compliance. So IT compliance and governance, and then we have our strategy and operations group, which help do a lot of the finance and we use like a product planning model. So they do kind of product planning and product life cycle, keeping us all straight in that way. Some of the architecture, so kind of a supporting function group. So overall, we're about close to like 500 people now, and across those 3 global sites. And we've actually just stood up a site in Hyderabad, India. Overall, IT has done that, and we're supporting that and have a bit of a small team there as well. So lots to talk about. Big group.
Amazing. It's a big kingdom you're on top of. It's amazing. And my understanding that healthcare, biotech, pharma, it's a highly regulated industry, which makes it even more fun. So from that perspective, how is it different versus, I don't say financial services or outside of heavily regulated industries? What some of the interesting angles you see, that complexity or challenge that adds to it?
Yeah, I've been in other industries. Actually, probably the most challenging one I've been in was right before this. I was a CISO/CIO at an ed tech company called Renaissance Learning, and that actually was more challenging with regulation because it was regulating data about students, children, funny enough, the EU was really focused around like AI in use in education. So we were one of the first groups to kind of lean ahead in compliance and regulation to AI, because of funny enough, it was about student data. So that was actually more challenging. I think at Merck we have more of a focus around regulation for SEC, because we're SOX regulation. Because we're a public company, that's probably the primary driver, I would say. But there is also other regulations we look at from the FDA and the EMA, the European Medical Agency. So those are kind of the large, specific industry regulation. And then we're also looking at the specific ones in Europe, like NIS2 is something we're considering, and the specific ones in China. They're just like the implications of being a global company. So, those are the ones we really, really think about. And it's, what I like to think about when it comes to regulation is always trying to adhere to the highest standard. So be it, federal regulation, national regulation, or state regulation. Sometimes you always have to kind of go to the highest bar, and figure out how to way to map your compliance to those other regulations to that highest standard. And it was a really good.
I just hope they don't contradict each other.
Yeah, usually not. Yeah, we have a lot of team members on the GRC side that spend a lot of time, deconflicting that. So it's a lot of work, and they do a really good job at it.
Absolutely. Well, we're recording this on December 19th. So we're getting towards the end of the year, looking forward to some downtime and holidays or whatnot. But I think it's a good point in time to take stock of 2025 and looking back at the past 12 months. What sticks out? What's top of mind? What happened? Whether it's technology or regulation, incidents. That's looking back at the last 12 months. What were the most memorable and exciting things? Let's give it like top three or so. What sticks out?
Top three. So I'd say probably the two kind of focus areas we had this year that we were concentrating on. One was around maturity of our cyber fusion center, and trying to become more of an advanced analytics, I would say, in that group, and detect more complex threat. And we deployed some technology there, an MDR tool, managed detection response tool, that really helped us out and helped reduce it helped us really improve the signal to noise ratio and triage. And we were able to really focus. I'd say we reduced anywhere between 50 to 75% of the overall incidents by being able to triage better. And we also had some other improvements there too, some automation. We used like a ServiceNow as a large strategic a big strategy for IT, has made a big investment in ServiceNow, and just using a lot of that to automate some of the functions. So there was a lot of improvement there, and that group has matured quite a bit, which we're really proud of. And then the other area we focused around was increasing our zero trust strategy. So focusing on microsegmentation of our crown jewels, really driving that home to full completeness of controls there, enforcing MFA across the estate for crown jewels and other applications. So those are kind of the big areas where we focused on. And then I'd say from like a process side, we in the last couple of years, we've focused on the product planning model. You would call it like CI/CD, kind of planning, but we applying that to the things we do in security, right? So even though we're not making software per se for like users, we still are providing a service or providing engineering tools for stakeholders, and viewing it in that lens. And that really has kind of been fully realized this year, I think, and the team has done a great job there. Still got a little bit of ways to go, but they've done a great job. And what that's done is help us prioritize our reach.
That's great. That's great. And if we zoom out of like from Merck and kind of go to 10,000 foot view, that look at the industry in general, what are some of the trends? We hear a lot about supply chain and open source. That becomes top of mind for a lot of people. Businesses adopting AI tools, vibe coding, that's kind of another track. Non-human identities and in general, like identity and access management, kind of tied into kind of both themes. What sticks out? What are the trends that you kind of played out in the last 12 months that really became waves in their own right?
Yeah, I think You touched on the supply chain. I think that's a big one, on some of the compromise of and what is it, NJP? I'm blanking on
Yeah,
the
yeah.
I got it right. Yeah, the NJP modules. Those things are happening more rapidly now. Or even you look at the F5 breach that occurred. I don't think there's been any evidence of supply chain yet, but I mean, I think that's, you see these advanced actors, some of them nation state actors, that are looking at what are the largest enterprises in the world using, and how can we try to get in the back door there and compromise the supply chain from the get go. So that's definitely a trend we're seeing, and that's something to be concerned about. And then I'd say there's this rapid targeting of vulnerabilities by groups that are kind of one level down from even the most advanced groups. Kind of, like, I would say, like the second tier. Like one of them that comes to mind is like one that I've been reading about, the Akira ransomware group. Like they this is just one example, but we've seen this a couple times. Like they find a vulnerability. Like they were using a sonic wall vulnerability, and when they see there's a way to do public exploitation or external exploitation of that vulnerability, they come up with a very clean, tight playbook where they hit it, they get in, they take what they're going to get, and they move on to the next one. They like spray hundreds or thousands of targets, and they've like commoditized it almost, or industrialized it. They can operate at scale. Like they have a system where they leave a ransom note on a system, and they say, "Hey, well, you've been hit by the Akira ransomware group. Contact us on this chat channel on the dark web." And then we'll do, like a customer service thing. So we just see this like rapid cycle of identifying this external vulnerability that many companies may have. And if you don't patch it quickly, if you don't fix it quickly, you're going to get hit, because they're going to just move so rapidly through it, and they can just operate at scale. And those are the trends that the realistic things that have occurred. Yeah, I think we're going to probably talk about AI eventually, and that's actually kind of we've made some investments there. Well, something I'm thinking about for next year. But those are the realistic things that I think occurred in 2025 across the community.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, and to pull on the AI thread, I come from I was at reInvent a couple of weeks ago, and everything was AI. And I have a prediction to make. I think when we go to RSA in March in San Francisco, and we go to the expo, and RSA probably has like 350, maybe 400 sponsors. My bet, I'm willing to go on record for this. With this, my bet is every single company will have AI either in the name or in the byline or in the pitch. So every single one.
Or the TLD will be AI of the company, right?
Yeah.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's what everybody's talking about, and the way I've been thinking about AI is, first there's what the bad guys are doing, how they're using AI. There's what we're doing as a security team, like what products and tools we're using to leverage AI to fight them. And then as a company that produces AI tools, and we have like a very big and mature AI team that produces AI tooling for our business, how do we protect that, and how do we comply with that? So those are kind of the three lenses I think about it. And the first one, which kind of the most relevant, is how the bad guys are using it. I think there's kind of three ways. Again, I think about it is they're doing things faster, bigger, and better, right? And on the faster, we've seen them use AI to move rapidly, like transit networks. Once they get in and do lateral movement very quickly, what used to take a week now takes a day or less. We've seen them do things bigger. So instead of sending one email or a few phishing emails to targets that are very like an advanced phishing email that's highly complex and tailored to the victim, they can now send 1,000 of those, and each one is unique to the victim. And if you click on it, it's unique to your name, and only you can click on it, and it's highly scrutinized to that particular victim. So they're doing things like they're able to scale. But on the better side, I've not really observed them doing things too much better, like the quality, with the exception of like the fraud space, the fraud side of things, where you have deep fakes, and there's been some improvement there. But I also think adversaries are struggling with adopting AI just like everybody else is. And I don't think they've really mastered it yet. So some of like the faster, bigger things are kind of the low hanging fruit in a way. And we've definitely seen rapid adoption there, but not really so much in the last one. So that's just kind of how I think of it, and what we're looking to how we're looking to tackle the problem in 2026.
Yeah, interesting. I had a conversation with a few practitioners a couple of days ago, and the topic came up. It's not really around kind of the enterprise level hackers and state sponsored, but more people who work remotely using AI to take interviews or take 3 jobs and then farm them out to arbitrage the grades. Or I think it was this morning. This morning I just read an article. I think it was on LinkedIn, where Microsoft detected like a minuscule delay in keystrokes,
AWS
and realized, AWS, and realized that the person was not stateside but was in North Korea.
That was fascinating. Yeah. Those are the things, like like the fraud angle, like pretending to be someone you're not, either for a job interview, for like finance scams, BEC scams. Like that's definitely, the quality has improved there. But I think if you're going to say, has the quality improved to do like a fully external penetration, getting in lateral movement, fighting the internal team, like I wouldn't say like, and not that I've observed or seen or read about in Intel, like that the quality, like if you think of it in 3, variables, you could do things, quicker, at scale, or better quality, right? And I haven't really seen that one yet.
Interesting. Well, we looked at 2025, and we cracked a few jokes about RSA. Now looking at 2026, what are your predictions? Again, whether some trends playing out and becoming more prominent, maybe some of the trends that are emerging that you think will play out. What are some of the waves that you're seeing hitting the shores in 2026?
It's always challenging to make predictions. I'm usually wrong, but yeah.
We'll record the same session in 12 months, so we'll look back, and there'll be a test. There'll be a test in the end.
Record like 4 versions of what I'm saying. So I think, as it applies to AI, I think 26 will be kind of the year of compliance for AI. The EU AI Act is kind of looming out there. There's various things that are pushing around. There's, states in the US which are pushing it. I know there was an executive order that said states couldn't regulate that, but I think that's going to be questioned. And a lot of countries themselves are releasing their own version of AI compliance. So it's governments are really focusing on it. Regulators are really focusing on it. And I think this is the year where, okay, we have, historically, we've had these programs, we've been trying out AI technology, and now, like, okay, we got to get serious about it from compliance. We have to form a team, we have to form a strategy, we have to have a plan, we have to have controls, we have to be tested, audited. So, we're definitely, we've been leaning ahead of that, I'd say, for years. But I think we're probably ahead of the game in some ways, but I think that's all going to come together a bit more in 2026. What we're doing is we're standing up what I call an AI task force, which will have focus on different, areas across the company and what we're doing with AI. We're calling it, we got to govern AI, set the rules, secure AI, and then use AI, with my organization. And we have an AI team. We have a chief AI officer who is the team that actually makes these tools. So we need to figure out, the part of the task force is, how do we partner with them? Because they're really the primary stakeholder. They're the owner of this whole thing. When you talk about like actual AI compliance, like they're technically the owner. Like, what do we need to do to support them and make sure we're releasing these tools quickly, but safely? And that's really where our focus is going to be. So, and I think a lot of companies are feeling the same way. And so I think you're going to also see like implementation of some tools like control tower tools, monitoring, tools where you're seeing what these agents have access to and things like that.
So it's compliance GRC for AI. That's one. What are the number two and number three?
Just general trends for next year.
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll start to see some more use of AI in the SOC. Well, I guess across security, I should say, but I think you'll start to see it more come to life a bit more in the security operations center. That I think is one of the best use cases for AI. So using AI to really find threats autonomously or agentically. Use of like one of my goals for next year is to actually have AI agents on the org chart. So like having we have say 10 tier 1 level people in the SOC and use it just making up a number. Like I want to add two more. I want to add two that.
It's kind of like doing more with less. But do you mean it's more on the corporate side, or do you mean consolidation with I know all the start? I mean, it's you brought AI SOC. I think there's like 40 plus startups that are.
Yeah, I think they're both.
Great.
Yeah, they're both interrelated, right? So it's one, you'll see consolidation in the like industry for like startups getting bought up and things like that. Outside of just AI, like you'll move to kind of the more hyperscaler model, right? Where you look at Zscaler.
Mm-hmm.
They just bought Red Canary. There's like I think there were two other announcements in the last couple of months of companies they bought. Like they're trying to be more of a hyperscaler for security. Palo Alto is kind of doing the same thing. Microsoft's been doing that for years and they'll continue to do that. So it's like you'll see this consolidation around larger companies where they'll have multiple offerings, or they can encompass more of your security stack, and you could get like a economy of scale there and some cost reduction. And at the same time as companies are trying to do more with less and be more efficient, bigger companies are going to say, well, that's a good option. Instead of having 17 different vendors that or probably more than that, right? 100 different vendors that I use, maybe I can have 20 vendors instead of 100 and get an economy of scale there. So so they're kind of interrelated, right? And that it's kind of everything goes in waves, right? Where you kind of move into this period of recession area or lower growth economy, where usually those consolidations are happening and the companies are also pulling back, and then you move back up into more innovative economy, and people are willing to spend and take risks and spend money on startups and things like that. So yeah, that's just something I think we'll see. We're already seeing that trend. I think we'll see more of it in 2026.
Certainly. Well, and it's growth or high growth or slow growth. I think this concept, this ideal of single pane of glass, however elusive, it's compelling, right? So even if you're going from 100 to 20, it's still compelling because you're instead of dealing with 100 vendors, you're dealing with 20. It's and they do more, but it just context switching, and it's just less of a load. It makes perfect sense, even though they're not going to compress to one eventually. Well, not inconceivable future, but still, as a trend, it's compelling.
You also get a flywheel effect of, for if you're using say 2 vendors before to do your endpoint protection, and then you move to one, you have this. Then you have one big team just concentrate on that one thing and provide all the attention to that, tuning and updating and things, which adds a lot of time when you're sustaining these tools. So I tend to see, you say like this flywheel effect and maturity when you tend to consolidate, but you also have to think too, like you don't necessarily get that best in class effect. You will make sacrifices. So if you're going with large company X and they have 10 different offerings, but 7 of them are pretty good, but the other 3 are like so. You're kind of making a sacrifice on the so if their phishing tool, for example, is pretty so, you're making a sacrifice there, and you're saying, well, I'm sacrificing, I'm getting a C+ tool instead of an A+ tool in that particular area or domain because I'm sacrificing it for overall cost savings. And you do have to make those trade-offs. And you often see, I think the most mature companies around are usually finance, and they typically go with a best-in-class strategy or try to at least. So you do have to weigh those things as you're making those decisions.
No, it's a compromise. It's priorities, budgets. It's not always a simple question. It's, and a lot of different kind of challenges and priorities that need to be, and constituencies and different internal champions and internal clients. So there's a lot going into this mix. So absolutely, it's but it's interesting that you think that these are some of the trends that are going to play out. There's a lot of kind of change. There's always change. It feels like you're in a treadmill, and the treadmill starts going faster in terms of technology adoption or challenges, or it feels like things are accelerating. And with change, figuring out your career becomes sometimes tricky, especially when people are switching careers or switching from technology to cybersecurity, or figuring out what to major in college and things like this. But I wanted to pull on one thread. I know you have a military background, and I know that a lot of people with this pedigree, they're looking into private sector and looking to make a career in cybersecurity. And from your experience, what would be your advice for someone in these shoes and looking at cybersecurity as a growing industry and growing space, and looking for opportunities to get ahead? What should these people over-index on? Is it certifications? Is it maybe mentorship? Is it networking? Trying different, going broad, going deep on a certain subject? What would be your advice?
So I would say, just at a high level, networking is so important. It's a lot of it is who you know, not what you know. So must continue to do that. And luckily, a lot of military folks like myself are in security, and you probably have more connections than you think. Or even Terry Rice, who hired me here, he was also former military, Army. We actually had the same job in the Army. He was a bit before me, and I didn't know him beforehand. I had never met him. I didn't know him, but we knew all the same people, right? So it was like instant validation. And my former boss was his classmate, so at West Point. So it was just like those kind of connections are just very, very valuable. So, but I would say if I look at my career, and I said I've been doing this about 22 years now, and my government and military and government side was about 10 of those years, so like the first half. And when I got out, I immediately realized that there were really big gaps in my knowledge set that as translating this to the private sector. So when the last job I had when I was at NSA, I was doing like operational in a cyber operations center that did kind of offensive things to do intelligence gathering. But that didn't really have a place in the private sector. So I had to learn how to like translate that into what the private sector was doing. Mm-hmm. And there were definitely like roles, procedures, processes or tools that I had never heard of before. And I felt like people were speaking a different language. So what I tried to do was plan out my career as best I could. I kind of started to set a North Star, and I said, hey, I want to be a CISO one day. I think it took me a little bit of time to realize I want to do that, but I think I want to be a CISO at a big company one day. That's what I want to do. And how do I get there? Like, what roles do I need? Like, what map do I need to make and to get there? And then I tried, when those opportunities came up, I took those roles. But like, for example, I thought one of the biggest things I was missing was understanding the product model and CI/CD, as we were just talking about. Like, it's kind of a common language in business. And in the military, you have something called MDMP. That stands for Military Decision Making Process. And what that really means, it's just like a structured way to do planning and organization and prioritization when you're doing like a mission plan. Well, the private sector, the version of that is really like CI/CD or Agile, or whatever you want to call it. The 87 names we call it, but that's the same thing. Like, so I had to learn that, and so I actually took a job as a product manager at IBM, which really helped me understand that. And I did that for a few years. So I tried to focus on the biggest areas where I had gaps. I had like the technical knowledge or the operational knowledge. Leadership, I'd been doing that for 10 years, but I was really translating that into the private sector. Now what I'll say too is I had the advantage of doing that after 10 years. And now I'm 22 years in my career. But if you get out at 20, which many people do, when you retire in the military, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage. And you might have to take a job that is kind of maybe one or two steps below where you should be. Like, after 22 years of doing this, I'm in a CISO spot, or competitive to be in a CISO spot, or at least, maybe a direct report to a CISO. You may walk out of the military after 20 years and not be that, right? Because you don't have that kind of connective tissue to the private sector and know about those particular unique things that you need to know in the private sector. So you might have to take one or two jobs at a lower level to kind of learn that and gain that skill set before you get to the top. So that's kind of the biggest lesson that I learned. And, kind of looking back at it, I was actually talking to somebody else about that today.
It's awesome, but it's so that path is it's not just require. It doesn't only require introspection. You need to understand where those gaps are, but also you need to map what jobs will help you fill those gaps, and what's the sequence of those positions, what industries, what company size, what roles. It's really non-trivial. And I would imagine, you mentioned networking. It's really, I would think, finding a mentor who's 10 years ahead of you, who can actually plot this path for you, because it's kind of like, you may know the ingredients of a cake, but if you miss the proportions or the sequence, it's still not going to come off. So,
and you have to also realize like where you have a disadvantage that you could never overcome, or it would be so difficult to overcome. So like, for example, and you mentioned one really important thing, industry. I noticed, in this space, a lot of times when they're recruiting a CISO or recruiting a senior leader in security, you typically try to look for people with knowledge of that particular industry. So like finance is big on that, right? If you're not going to be a CISO in finance unless you have financial experience, it's going to be very rare. And even in pharmaceutical, they look for people who have that background. So I knew, and they look for people with like 5-10 years of experience in that sector. I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. I didn't have that. So I said, okay, I'm never going to be able to do that. So I might as well, if an opportunity comes up that's cross sector, I'm going to take it, right? I'm not going to say, I'm not going to, I kind of started on the enterprise side in DuPont, which is manufacturing. And I didn't say, hey, I got to stay here for like 10 years to really get that industry experience before I move on, before I get the next, I'm going to be at that same role for 10 years till I even think about the next role, because I got to get that industry experience. I said, no, I'm already at a pretty senior level. If something comes up in a cross sector, I'm going to go do it. And, then something came up to be a CISO at an ed tech company, and I did it. Even though it was a very different industry. But what I tried to do is build those experiences along the way. So then I had manufacturing, and then I had an understanding of cloud, and that came in very handy in this job, because we, although we're pharmaceutical, we are a manufacturer. It's a big part of what we do, manufacture product. And we also are very into cloud. We have thousands of applications that we run in our own cloud. And, how do you protect that? So kind of bringing those things together helped me get this job. So that, I think you have to like play to your strengths too. And you have to say, you got to realize, or you have to also realize like where my disadvantages are, where I could just never overcome. And you have to, say like, let me turn that into turn it on its head a little bit. So yeah, just another thing to
Well,
think
it's
about.
like uh, the Tiger Woods never practicing getting the ball out of the sand bunker because he is focusing on his drive, because he's focusing on his strength, not trying to compensate his weakness. It makes perfect sense. That's awesome. Wow, it's super helpful. Thank you so much for taking this time, and looking forward to hosting other events in Philadelphia. Go Eagles! And
Go
thanks, and
Birds. We say go.
go Birds! Go Birds! There you go. So see, I'm giving myself out as not as a local.
So welcome.
So where can people find you if someone wants to connect and reach out?
So the best way is on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
You could look me up there. I'm pretty responsive and I'm open to connect there. So yeah, definitely reach out if you want
Awesome.
to talk.
Sounds good. Thanks, Bob. Go Birds.